While playing hide and seek with my daughter, I intentionally locked her inside the cabinet where she was hiding. Then Rebecca, Danny, and I hurriedly moved to another town. 20 years later, I returned to my old hometown with the intention of burying Emma. As soon as I stepped in front of that cabinet, a young childlike female voice suddenly rang out, "Daddy, you've finally come to find me." All of this stemmed from Danny's impending wedding. Rebecca and I had sought out a fortune teller. We only wanted to pick an auspicious date for the ceremony, but after he read the oracle, the fortune teller's expression turned grave. He asked, "Doesn't your family have a child who has been missing for many years?" There's something wrong with this reading. Hearing that, my confidence wavered for a moment. I quickly exchanged a glance with Rebecca. From the brief panic on her face, I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. The fortune teller continued, "A wedding is a major event. The whole family must be reunited before holding it. If someone is still missing, something dire might happen after the ceremony." "What could possibly go wrong?" Rebecca pressed. "You needn't ask more," he said. "It's definitely not a good sign. Don't you have a daughter who never came back home?" I nodded. "Yes. But that made perfect sense when I read the oracle. I sensed that your daughter yearned to return home." Tsk, that little girl truly is formidable. His words left me confused. My daughter has been dead for 20 years. How could she possibly want to come home? And how could she be formidable, I asked. Since ancient times, the dead must be buried. The living must return home, he said. If you want your wedding to proceed properly, there must be no mistakes. Go home for now, and once the whole family is reunited, come back to me to pick the date. He did not insist on keeping us, so we had no choice but to follow his advice and leave. Back at our own house, Rebecca's face was ashen. She looked at me helplessly. What could we do? We'd moved 20 years ago. Emma had died long ago. How could we bring her home now? I scratched my head, feeling just as bewildered as she did. Danny's fiancée, Jennifer, came from a wealthy and influential family, and it had been extremely hard for Danny to find a bride like her. Rebecca's in-laws were very particular, insisting we find a fortune teller to choose a good wedding date. Now that the matter involved our daughter, I had to think of a solution. Our daughter's name was Emma Lawson. At home we called her Emmy. If she were still alive, she would be 28 this year. When Emma was 7 years old, Rebecca and I decided to move to the city for work. Moving from the countryside to the city is never easy, especially with 2 children in tow. On the night before we were to move, Rebecca suddenly declared that she didn't want to bring Emma along. She only intended to take our 7-year-old son. My parents are both gone, she said. The kids have no grandparents. If we don't bring our daughter, who will take care of her? She doesn't need care, Rebecca replied calmly. We'll just lock her up at home and pretend she never existed. I was astonished, but she seemed completely unconcerned. What was so strange about it? In our town, there were plenty of newborn infants whom their parents killed right away. We had kept Emma for 7 years already. Anyone would think that was remarkable. But there was no point in arguing. I had already made up my mind. Listen to me, I said. Tomorrow I'll tell you exactly what to do. Rebecca, who had always favored sons over daughters and had a strong-willed personality, agreed without complaint. The next day, as we packed our things as usual, Emmy and Danny were brimming with excitement, running back and forth as they hurriedly stuffed their toys into bags. Just as we were nearly finished packing, Rebecca gave me a subtle glance. I understood immediately, but hesitated for a long moment before finally stepping in front of our daughter. Emmy, I said flatly. Daddy's tired. Let's play hide and seek. She loved hide and seek, but she murmured, I don't want to play. I have to finish packing. Just then, her brother jumped in like a little helper. I want to play hide-and-seek. Emmy, come play with me. Daddy never plays with us. Pressured by Danny's pleading, Emmy finally relented. So I pretended to play with both children for a little while. Then, when Rebecca shot me another glance, our luggage was nearly packed, and we were ready to leave. I knew the moment had come to act. For the last round, I announced you hide, and Daddy and Danny will find you. Emmy, you have to hide really well. Rebecca chimed in, pretending to sound concerned. Don't worry, there's a perfect hiding spot for the game. No one will ever find you there. Let's go. Mommy will take you. Rebecca led her down the slope toward the small storeroom. No one else knew that beneath the storeroom lay a secret underground chamber. This chamber had been dug by my great-grandfather many years ago to store grain against famine. But as our living standards improved over the years and we no longer feared starvation, the chamber was abandoned. Inside the chamber stood a dilapidated iron cabinet, thick, heavy, unmovable, by 3 men, with a door as solid as iron impossible for a child to open. When Rebecca and Emmy descended into the cellar, I saw my wife hold a padlock in her hand. Soon after Rebecca emerged alone from the hidden chamber, that night we reported to the police that our daughter was missing. Back then, human traffickers ran rampant in the area, and Rebecca's dramatic weeping in front of the officers meant no one suspected that we were the ones behind her disappearance. In the blink of an eye, 20 years passed. In that time, we returned to our hometown a few times, but both Rebecca and I tacitly agreed not to bring it up, and no one went down to check the underground chamber. This time, because of Danny's wedding, I had no choice but to go back one more time. Didn't you hear the fortune teller say that the dead must be buried? Rebecca said. It's definitely because Emma was never laid to rest that he discovered something. We must go back to bury her in the ancestral grave. Hopefully she'll rest in peace and won't disrupt Danny's wedding. All right, I said. I'll go right now. We cannot miss Danny's wedding under any circumstances. That night I set out for our old home. The house was built in the ancient screen wall style. I felt my way through the darkness, not daring to switch on any lights for fear that the neighbors might notice something unusual. When I reached the small storeroom, I found the concrete slab concealing the cellar entrance. The instant I lifted it, I sensed something was wrong. A blast of bone-chilling cold air rushed out from below and struck my face. As I heaved the slab aside, I also heard a heavy thud, an echo like something massive striking the iron cabinet in the cellar. I jumped in fright, nearly dropping my flashlight, and held my breath to listen more closely. A few minutes passed without any further sound. I reassured myself that rats down there must have heard me and run off in terror. With that thought, I climbed down the wooden steps into the cellar. Inside, everything was just as it had been 20 years ago, dusty, pitch black. The beam of my flashlight revealing only the old rust-stained cabinet in the corner. Its paint had peeled almost entirely, and the old padlock on the door still held fast. I did not detect any stench of decay. 20 years had passed, so surely Emma had decomposed to the point of leaving no trace. Any foul odor would have dissipated long ago. I exhaled and inserted the key that Rebecca had given me, preparing to open the cabinet door. Suddenly, a childlike giggle rang out, soft and eerie. I jerked my head around. "Who's there?" I asked instinctively, thinking someone might be watching me. But there was no answer. Determined that no one should see my daughter's remains, I scanned the room carefully. I found no one in the cellar, though in one corner I noticed a dried-up animal carcass, perhaps a cat or a dog. I returned to the cabinet, exhaled, and convinced myself that my nerves were playing tricks on me. I took the key and turned the lock. But to my astonishment, there was suddenly a thunderous crash from right inside the cabinet itself. The space within that heavy iron box seemed vast, as if someone had thrown themselves violently against the door from within. The ear-splitting noise caused the cabinet's door to rattle. My hand shook so badly that the flashlight slid out of my grip and clattered to the floor. Could some living being have survived all this time inside that cabinet? But what could it be? "Daddy? Is that you?" A child's voice spoke from within. "I've been waiting for you. I've been in the cabinet all this time." The voice was unmistakably Emmy's, with that childish, lilting tone I hadn't heard in years. My blood ran cold. "Hee, Daddy finally found me. You really hid me well this time," the voice teased. My heart hammered. Holy, this is really Emmy talking. I stumbled backwards several steps, nearly wetting my pants in terror. What on earth was happening? Didn't Emma die long ago? "Daddy, why aren't you answering? Hurry and open the door." The pounding on the cabinet grew more frantic. Metal on metal reverberating through the confined space. "Open it, Daddy. Open it." Then came a whimper. "Daddy, I don't want to play hide-and-seek anymore. Let me out. Let me out." The banging intensified, as if something monstrous were about to break through the iron door. My legs trembled so violently that I could barely stand. I had to get out of that cellar. I scrambled upstairs, fleeing so frantically that I didn't even dare to grab the key I had dropped. Once I was back inside the main house, I recounted the entire ordeal to Rebecca. She stared at me in disbelief. "Andrew, are you too afraid to go bury Emma, or are you lying to trick me? There's no such thing as this kind of horror." I tried to convince her I wasn't lying, but she still would not believe me. In exasperation, she stormed out, muttering, "If you won't go bury her, then do it yourself." She left, and not long after, Danny's in-laws called to ask about the wedding preparations. "Have you selected a date with the fortune teller yet?" they demanded. Jennifer's family was big-time business. They were obsessed with feng shui, especially the wedding date. I dared not tell them the truth. Instead, I lied that Rebecca was ill and promised we would see the fortune teller in a few days. After hanging up, I pulled out a dozen beers, hoping to steady my nerves with alcohol. After a few bottles, I still couldn't shake the question, what was in that cabinet? If it were a person, how could they have survived 20 years in a sealed box without food or water? And if it were a demon or spirit, why would it be confined to a cabinet? Pondering until I fell into a restless sleep, I woke at some point to a forceful shake. "Andrew, wake up. Get up right now." I opened my eyes to see Rebecca standing over me. It was dark outside, and she had returned from our hometown. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes torn, and her eyes still held a look of terror. I realized in that moment that she must have heard the same strange voice. "Well," I mumbled, "I wasn't lying, right? Didn't you hear a voice from inside the cabinet?" "This is too damned freaky," she replied, still looking dazed. "I heard it too. And it wasn't only hearing, I actually opened the cabinet door." "What?" My heart leapt into my throat. "You opened it. What was inside it?" In a trembling voice, she said, "She's standing right outside that door." And I froze up. I turned toward the cellar door and saw it pushed open, revealing a little girl in a flower-patterned dress with neatly braided pigtails stepping into the room. She grinned brightly. "Daddy, I'm home now." I stared at her eyes wide, my heart pounding in my chest. This was Emma Lawson, my daughter from 20 years ago. Even the clothes she wore were identical to the day we locked her in that cabinet, the braids Rebecca had made for her that fateful day. I was paralyzed with fear and couldn't utter a word. The girl took a few steps toward me and I recoiled. "Stay back!" "Don't come any closer," I shouted. Was she human or some kind of ghost? In response, Rebecca also backed away 2 steps in horror. "This is impossible," she whispered. "She died long ago. How can she look exactly as she did back then, without any harm whatsoever? What are you two talking about? The girl asked, tilting her head innocently. Whoever died a long time ago. Daddy? Then she glanced around. Oh, this is the new house you moved to. It's so pretty, I like it a lot. She looked around in wonder, evidently thrilled by everything she saw. After a moment, she suddenly asked, Oh, right, Daddy. Where is my brother? Isn't he supposed to be playing hide-and-seek with me? Why didn't Mommy open the door to let him find me? At the mention of Danny, my muddled thoughts snapped back. Where's your brother? Didn't he come find you after Mommy opened the door? Rebecca, panic flickering in her eyes, quickly covered. Danny had something urgent to do. He went out for a bit. What kind of urgent business could he have? The little girl's question was difficult for us to deflect. Rebecca dragged me into the bedroom. Emmy, she said, trying to mask her panic. Daddy and Mommy have something to discuss in private. You play here for a while. Without waiting for a response, she slammed the bedroom door shut. Once inside, she hissed. Andrew, tell me, is she our daughter or some kind of demon? How would I know? I stammered. And even if we knew, what do you want to do about it? If we told the police, they'd uncover that we locked her away 20 years ago. We'd be implicated, convicted, ruin Danny's life. What would that leave us? So what do we do? She exclaimed. If that thing isn't our daughter, but some demon, our entire family's doomed. And we can't ask the fortune teller either. He knows Jennifer's family. If he let that slip, Danny's engagement would be off. What then? Nervous and uncertain, neither of us could decide. Then a thought struck me. I pulled a business card out of a drawer. It was an advertisement for a private detective Emma Harper, stating, We'll resolve any matter. Below was a name and phone number. Rebecca raised an eyebrow, curious. Where did you get that? I found it somewhere, I said, hoping she wouldn't ask more. I didn't mention that recently she had been away buying vegetables for suspiciously long stretches, and I'd found this card slid under the door whenever she came home. It was for emergencies, I'd told myself. I dialed the number, and soon a voice answered. Detective Harper speaking. A young-sounding woman. After I briefly explained the situation, she sounded incredulous. She'd never heard anything so bizarre. She asked me to recount all the details clearly. I solemnly retold the entire story, how our daughter had been locked in an iron cabinet for 20 years, yet now stood before us, alive and unchanged. When I finished, she paused and said, I'll take the case. Let's meet in person. Bring your daughter with you. Hang up now. I filled with relief and returned to the living room. Emmy was seated on the couch. As soon as she saw me, her small face lit up with a smile. Daddy, do you need me to buy you some wine? I shook my head. No. Daddy wants to take you to meet a friend. Okay. She jumped up and hugged my leg. Great. I want to go out to play too. I couldn't suppress a pang of emotion. Before she disappeared, she used to do exactly this. I took Emmy to meet Detective Emma Harper, a young woman with glasses and slicked back hair. Her office was in an old apartment building. Though the surroundings were modest, Detective Harper conducted herself with utmost professionalism. After greeting us, she made me a cup of good tea and gave Emmy a cup of sweet milk tea. When speaking with Emmy, she never asked questions in a suspicious tone. Instead, she chatted casually, as if making small talk. Which cartoons do you like? What books do you read? Which stories did you study in class? Everything Emmy answered came from exactly 20 years ago, the popular cartoons, the books, the lessons still fresh, as if she'd just been in school. After gathering enough information, Detective Harper led me into a separate room for a private conversation. Mr. Lawson, she said solemnly, Your daughter genuinely seems to have come back as she was 20 years ago. This is the most peculiar case I've ever encountered. I won't charge you for it because I want to understand what's going on too." Hearing that she wouldn't charge a fee, I profusely thanked her. Detective Harper then asked, "Have you ever heard of a theory that there are strange spaces on Earth where time flows abnormally, either extremely fast or extremely slow? The cabinet you locked your daughter in might be a place where time passes very slowly. 20 years could have passed for you, but inside it may have been only 2 or 3 days, so although you've aged, she remains unchanged." I was utterly stunned. "Such a thing actually exists." "Absolutely," she replied. She took a large book from her shelf, filled with unsolved mysteries of the world, flipped to a bookmarked page, and handed it to me. Take a look at this example. In the 19th century in North America, a white man went missing on a deserted island for 25 years. When he was found apart from having a long beard, there was no sign of aging on him. Some suspected the island had a time flow anomaly. What you see here aligns with my hypothesis. But this is only conjecture based on documentation. You'll need to run an experiment with that cabinet." She asked, "Do you have time?" "Let's go to your old house. Also, I strongly recommend running a DNA test on this girl to confirm biologically that she is your daughter." "A DNA test?" I furrowed my brow. "How much would that cost?" "Over $300, she said. "I know a lab that charges around $200. I immediately refused. Just arranging a wedding for Danny had already cost a great deal. Even a good bottle of liquor would cost nearly $300. I needed to save money wherever possible. "She's my daughter. I don't need a DNA test." "All right," she said. "Let's go to your old home right now. The experiment is simple. Even someone unskilled like me can explain. I'll place a candle inside the cabinet. That cabinet is so large that at a normal oxygen rate, the candle will burn out in 2 hours. We'll light the candle now and come back tomorrow to check. If the candle is completely burned out, then time inside is normal and our hypothesis is incorrect. If it barely burns, it confirms the hypothesis. Additionally, I'll put an ice cube inside. Seeing how much it melts will give us another data point." Once everything was in place, I took Emmy back home. The instant we crossed the threshold, Emmy flopped onto the sofa in exhaustion. She scratched her head. "Daddy, my head is so itchy, I want to wash my hair." "Rebecca," I started to call my wife, then realized she wasn't here. "You don't need Mommy. Let me wash your hair, Daddy will." The girl pouted in imitation. My heart jolted as if I'd been transported back 20 years to when she was small and obedient, always wanting to be with me. I was tired from the day's events, and a reprimand lingered on my tongue, but when I saw her black, shiny eyes, I swallowed my scolding. "All right, let Daddy wash your hair." I had rarely, if ever, washed their hair. I mimicked Rebecca's mannerisms, sitting on a low stool so Emmy could lean back against the sink, her hair soaked in warm water. She smiled contentedly, humming a nursery rhyme. "Sky so dark, stars above, insects buzz, insects love." She looked at me and asked, "Daddy, was my singing good?" "Very good," I replied patiently. Truth be told, I had no idea what she was singing. Nevertheless, praising her made her giggle with delight. It wasn't long before she stopped singing and asked Daddy, "Why did it take you so long to find me? Did you and Mommy really wait for me so long? Why didn't you come look sooner? Daddy, why didn't you look for me?" I was on the verge of anger from being questioned so persistently, and as I was about to snap, I suddenly cried out in horror. The little girl who'd been lying so peacefully on my lap had changed. She was now a desiccated corpse. Her skin was shriveled and yellowed. Empty eye sockets were 2 black hollows, yet her mouth still moved as she uttered those familiar, childlike words. "Daddy, why didn't you look for me? I waited for you for 20 years. I cried every day. I really wanted to come home. Didn't you want me back?" The sight was so horrific that I felt my sanity slipping. I grabbed her corpse and pressed her head into the wash basin. She gagged, sputtering. "Daddy, I can't breathe. Let me go, Daddy. You can't kill me." She wailed for help. "Mommy, Mommy, save me. Daddy's drowning me." Detective Harper, sitting at the edge of the sink, looked on in shock. "Andrew Lawson, what are you doing?" she shouted. I continued to force the corpse's head under the water. "She's not our daughter. She's a monster." Those words had barely left my lips when I froze again. Lowering my eyes, I saw that the corpse I'd been holding down had transformed back into her normal self. It was indeed the same little girl, Emma Lawson. No trace of the horrific, desiccated body remained. "What is happening?" I stammered, utterly bewildered. Rebecca, trembling, approached slowly. "You said you would care for her, but you tried to kill her." She accused, tears welling in her eyes. Meanwhile, I stared at Emmy, who was in her mother's arms, sobbing pitifully. Yet on the edge of her lips was a faint, cold smile, sending shivers down my spine. "Emmy, what's going on?" "What am I seeing?" I whispered to myself. The little girl looked up with tear-streaked cheeks. "Daddy, did you really not want me back?" "I waited for you 20 years, every day," I cried. "Why didn't you come for me?" At that moment, I realized neither I nor Rebecca had any clear answers. We could only stand speechless as our daughter rocked back and forth in her mother's arms, the eerie coldness in her smile still echoing in my mind. Everything felt suspended in that dreadful moment, as though time itself had warped around the cabinet where she had waited for us 20 unending years. That night, Emmy insisted on sleeping with us. God, even if I had 10 livers, I wouldn't dare share a bed with her. I grabbed a blanket and fled to the sofa, reluctantly spending the night there. I had steeled myself. Just get through tonight, wait for Detective Emma Harper's experiment results, then I would deal with her. I absolutely could not let this monster stay in the house. The next morning, news arrived. Even before Detective Harper's findings, a message from my son saying he was about to come home. This was bad. Daniel Danny must not see Emma like this. We still didn't know if Emma was a person or a demon. If she hurt Danny and our son was harmed in any way, I'd consider my life wasted. As Emma ate breakfast, I hurriedly waved her over. "Stop eating. I'm taking you somewhere." I planned to lock her in the bedroom first, but she was fully on guard. "No way, Dad. You're going to lock me in the cabinet again, aren't you?" "You little creep." I rolled up my sleeves, ready to use force. Just then, Rebecca received a message from our son. She suddenly asked Danny's back. "Has he called you?" "Oh, our son's returning," Emma exclaimed with joy. Before I could react, she dashed outside, barefoot. I angrily yelled at Rebecca, "Are you out of your mind? Why bring up our son?" She flinched instinctively, raising her arm to shelter her head, revealing bruises and ugly scars I could barely stand to look at. I had no time to worry about her. I sprinted out to chase Emma. By the time I reached the gate, Emma was already standing across the street, right where Danny had just arrived. Sure enough, Danny stood frozen like a statue, his eyes fixed on Emma with bewilderment, confusion, and shock. His lips moved, making such a soft sound I could scarcely hear him. "Aunt Jennifer is standing next to him," I warned Emma. "Come back inside." I was terrified our future daughter-in-law, Jennifer Thompson, would notice something amiss. But Jennifer was perceptive. She sensed the uneasy atmosphere, looked Emma up and down for a long moment, and finally asked, "Who is this little girl?" Danny was about to speak, but I cut him off. "She's Danny's younger sister. Don't let the Thompsons know the truth." Jennifer Thompson clearly didn't believe me. Since when does Danny have a sister? Why has he never mentioned this girl who looks just like him? Isn't she his daughter? Panicking, I hastily explained. "Oh, goodness, Jennifer, think about it. This is my daughter. How could she be Danny's? He isn't married yet, so he can't have a daughter." After my explanation, Jennifer reluctantly accepted that Emma was not Danny's child. Even though Emma wasn't Danny's daughter, our family refused to be made fools of. "You've always told us Danny is an only child, and now you spring a sister on us. Hiding something this big, do you even care about us?" "I need to discuss this with my parents," Jennifer said flatly. "I do love Danny, but my family won't stand for being deceived like this." She strode off without another word. "Why are you just standing there?" "Go after her," I urged Danny. But Danny remained uncannily calm. "Well, at least I'm not an only child after all," he said coolly. "I never intended to lie to anyone. And truth is, I don't even want to get married. If Jennifer wants to think it over and call off the engagement, fine by me." I was so furious that I nearly jumped up and slapped him. All these years, Danny has always been like this, naive as a block of wood, not a shred of manliness in him. Why did I give birth to such a worthless son? Danny approached Emma and squatted down, asking gently, "You're Emma Lawson, right?" Emma rolled her eyes at him and replied, "You should call me Big Sister." She beamed, running her hand through his hair. "You've grown so tall, just one game of hide and seek, and look at you." Hearing that, Danny's expression instantly clouded over, as if something inside him shattered. He began to cry. Seeing my son so weak, I quietly tightened my fist. This little girl had ruined Danny's wedding prospects. I absolutely could not allow her to stay. I had to put her back in that cabinet. After all time inside, it was nearly frozen. Waiting another 2 or 3 decades before letting her out would be fine, or maybe never letting her out again. By then, Danny would be married to Jennifer Thompson, a wealthy family like hers. What would I have to worry about? With that thought, I called Detective Emma Harper to ask about the experiment's results. "I was just about to call you," she said. "I'm at your old house. Hurry over and take a look." Detective Harper had brought 3 high-powered lamps to illuminate the cellar. Though I thought I was prepared, seeing the results with my own eyes still shocked me. Inside the cabinet, the white candle had barely burned, nearly intact, and the ice cream was still frozen solid. "Mr. Lawson, it seems our hypothesis is correct," Detective Harper said. "Time in there really is almost stopped." Wonderful, this proved that Emma was not a demon, but an actual living child. Dealing with a demon would have been difficult, but handling a little girl was as easy as turning my hand over. "What do you intend to do next?" Detective Harper asked. I told him frankly that since my son's wedding was imminent, I needed to keep my daughter locked in the cabinet a little longer. "Here's what I want you to do," I said. "Help me come up with a reasonable excuse for Emma's appearance so my future daughter-in-law isn't angry and will agree to marry my son. It's best if we say she's my friend's daughter, nothing to do with our family. For some reason, I need to protect this child, so I'll lie that I'm her father." Detective Harper smiled. "All right, I'll take care of that. And as for the cost still free, this won't be hard. In fact, I should thank you for showing me such a miraculous cabinet." I was so pleased I could hardly close my mouth. Detective Harper really was a good person. This task would be effortless for him. If Emma grew up normally with the proper bride price, I might even consider giving her to him in marriage. But then Detective Harper suddenly changed his tone. "Say, Mr. Lawson, I agreed to handle everything for free. At the very least, you could show me a little respect." "What do you mean?" "Where have I failed to respect you?" I asked, instantly on guard. After carefully analyzing everything he said, I realized a few odd points in his account. He described my wife as cruel and scheming, and even told me that several times she had intended to harm her own daughter. If she truly was such a person, how could he still sleep in the same bed with her? I truly admired him. But what about me? Although I pretended to want to atone for my daughter in truth, I wanted to lock her in the cabinet again for my son's sake. Didn't he find that contradictory? Detective Harper pushed up his glasses and looked at me critically. "Huh, you really are something," he said. "I've dealt with many clients. Often when people recount unpleasant events, they unconsciously frame themselves as the victim." "Mr. Lawson, I think you're the same." I turned away, coldly snorting. "Why does that matter to you?" "Whether it was me or Rebecca who came up with the plan, what difference does it make?" Detective Harper sighed, defeated. "I'm just a detective, Mr. Lawson. You don't have to watch me so carefully. I only want to uncover the truth as part of my professional ethics. After all, I'm not charging you a penny." With that, he strode over to the iron cabinet and flung open its door. "Last night I wanted to ask, why are all those liquor bottles inside this cabinet, Mr. Lawson? Do you have a drinking problem? This makes it clear your mask is completely off." I realized he was right. There was no point in hiding. It was true I hadn't mentioned the liquor in the cabinet before, but that was my private business. Even people who keep diaries don't record every detail. Why should I be compelled to reveal everything about myself? Those bottles were from my wild drinking days in my youth. Because I often smashed liquor bottles, I came up with the idea to lock my daughter in the iron cabinet. Fine. I would tell him the truth. Yes, locking her away was my idea. But you can't really blame me. Our family was poor. Fewer mouths to feed meant fewer chopsticks at the table, and the money I saved by not feeding my daughter I could spend on liquor. Did he ask whether my wife had any say? Of course she did, but I was a patriarchal man. When she nagged, I grew irritated. I didn't need her approval, I just acted. All of Rebecca's injuries were from my blows, and I never mentioned that I broke her leg. That was the year I tried to kill Emma, and Rebecca fought me to protect our daughter, so I fractured her leg. She lay bedridden for 5 days before finally agreeing to lock Emma away. But it wasn't to kill Emma. It was Rebecca's idea to shut her in the cabinet to starve. At that time, Rebecca was just learning to walk again, and she bravely led Emma down to the cellar without hesitation. Watching her retreating figure, I thought, if she can show such resolve, I'll match her strength. Emma herself had been beaten by me many times. Whenever she would come to me whining and clinging, I would harshly kick her away. Who asked her to show up whenever I was happily drinking? That little brat was exactly like her mother, always infuriating. When I saw Emma suddenly return yesterday, my first instinct was to kill her. Whether human or demon, I dealt with her. But the law is strict, and I still felt uneasy, worried about how it would affect my son. Detective Harper listened to my entire story, perplexed. "If you didn't love your daughter, why did you have her in the first place?" he asked. Wasn't it because I didn't know whether I'd have a boy or a girl? If I'd known ahead of time, who would choose a useless daughter? I said. Tell you what, my son is about to be married, and Jennifer Thompson said she only wants one child. Their family is wealthy. I can't openly object. But I've thought it through. If my daughter-in-law gets pregnant, I'll find a way to have her check the baby's gender. If it's a girl, I'll surreptitiously give her a pill to induce abortion and get rid of the child. Oh, right. At that time, I'll have to buy that pill from you. Can you handle it? Detective Harper chuckled. I can handle it, but it's a bit inconvenient. That suited me fine. Everything was settled, and I rarely felt so relaxed. I sighed in relief, thinking I'd nearly been terrified into believing that freakish time-warped space didn't exist. But why should I be afraid he didn't understand? I lay awake all night considering another possibility. Detective Harper asked. What possibility? I explained. I worry that maybe back then Emma actually escaped and lived a normal life, got married, and had a daughter, and now she's using that daughter Lily to impersonate her former self and scare us. What? Why would you come up with a scenario even more bizarre than the last? Detective Harper adjusted his glasses again. I said, because if it were me, I'd definitely do the same. If someone made me that uncomfortable, I'd take my revenge. Haha, sorry for digressing, but I need to hurry back and lock that brat into the cabinet again. But don't say I'm exaggerating. This girl's cunning really does remind me of myself. For years, I've deceived Danny, telling him that his sister ran off to play hide-and-seek and was kidnapped by traffickers. He was only 7 then, and didn't remember the details. He just knew she'd played with him and never come back. For 20 years, he's been depressed, thinking he lost his sister. He's been on medication just to sleep. He couldn't handle the stress completely, unlike me. So what if his dad locked him away? Suddenly, a man's voice echoed. Footsteps approached the cellar entrance. Daniel "Danny" Lawson was standing there. I was taken aback for a moment, then scorned him. What are you doing here? I asked coldly. Emma wanted to see this place, Danny replied quietly, holding Emma's hand. Seeing that little girl, I flew into a rage and was about to lash out at her. Suddenly, Emma dashed out from beside Danny. It turns out that back then you wanted to kill me. No wonder you never came looking for me. You're so cruel, Daddy Lawson. Saying that, she bit down hard on my wrist. The pain shot through me. I tried to raise my hand and smack her, but she twisted away and immediately darted behind Danny. Unbelievable, she actually dared to bite me. Let's see if today you survive to tell the tale. Dad, I need to ask you something. Danny stepped in front of me, blocking my path. His voice was full of resentment. A bad feeling washed over me. Dad, why did you lie to me? Do you know how I've lived for the last 20 years? Only today did I learn that under that little storeroom by the back door, there was an underground cellar. I tried to shoo him aside. Get out of my way, son. You're making a scene. Go find Jennifer and get married like I planned. I'm waiting to hold my grandchild. Danny shook his head, eyes dark. Huh, you think I'm going to marry her? My father, the man who's even willing to kill his own daughter. How could I ever trust you? That cut deep. I raised my voice. Daniel, I did it for you. If I hadn't locked Emma away, you wouldn't be in the position you are today. On what basis do you have to accuse me? Danny's reply was barely above a whisper, but his words still struck me like a blow. I don't want to run in the bloodline of a monster like you. That's ungrateful, I snapped. I'm your father, say that again. Dare you call me a monster? This time, Danny remained silent. He reached behind his back and drew something that glinted like lightning in the sunlight. It was a knife. Oh my God, he's gone mad! Rage and fear surged together. My own blood pounded so fiercely in my head, I thought I might faint. My son dared to point a blade at me. How dare you point a knife at your father? In the next instant, I was frozen in shock, the words stuck in my throat. Not because he threatened me, but because I saw Danny drive the knife into his own chest. He didn't need to die for me to feel satisfaction. Such cruelty should have no place in the world. I was stunned for several seconds. In my haze, I didn't fully understand what was happening. All I knew was that Detective Emma Harper and Emma had been horrified. Detective Harper had covered Emma's eyes. Danny's body swayed, about to collapse. I lunged forward, intending to catch him before he hit the ground, but he recoiled from me. "Get away! Don't touch me!" he hissed. Ignoring his rejection, I called to Detective Harper. "Help my son hold him still. Tie off the wound. Do something." Detective Harper quickly pointed at the cabinet. "There's a towel in the cabinet. Wrap some around the ice cube to staunch the bleeding. Hurry." "All right, I'm going." I dashed to the cellar to find the towel. Before I could locate it, a thunderous slam rang out behind me. Then it went completely dark. I heard the cabinet door lock shut. I panicked. "What's going on, Detective Harper? Why did you lock the door?" "Open it. I have to get back and tend to my son." No response. "Open the door." Detective Harper. "What the hell is wrong with you? Let me out." I pounded on the door, but no one opened it. A narrow crack at the side let in a sliver of light. I pressed my face against it, forcing my eyes to adjust. Detective Harper was standing just in front of the cabinet. Finally, she spoke. "Andrew Lawson. Do you know what it feels like to be locked in a cabinet?" Her hand went up to her head, and she peeled off a wig. Previously, I assumed her name was Hua Qin. Now the long hair tumbled down, and her usually neutral features softened. "My real name isn't Hua Qin," she said. "My first name is Emma Harper." Putting aside the name, she continued. "I'm Emma Harper. I am Emma Lawson, Andrew Lawson's daughter. I am not worthy of being his child. No matter how much I resented him, I have to admit that in many ways I think just like my biological father. He was devious cruel, and I am no different. The reason I survived to this day is thanks to my birth mother. On the second night after he locked me in that cabinet, my mother found someone to buy me. She sold me for 3,000 yuan to a couple who had no children and wanted a well-behaved 8-year-old. That couple's cellar was in an old house. They gave my mother a key and told her they would come pick me up. Luckily, it was autumn, so the cellar wasn't too cold or too hot. When I finally passed out from exhaustion in that cabinet, I woke up in the home of my foster parents. They were kind and warm, especially my foster dad. He was self-sufficient, gentle, never an alcoholic, never went on a drunken rampage. Some people warned them, buying a child that old she might escape and come back to her real home. But only I knew there was nothing left for me in that old house. My father tried to kill me. Why would I ever return? Besides, I had spent so many nights cowering with Danny behind that door whenever my father came home drunk and beat my mother. Now I was finally free of that life. Under my foster parents' care, I grew up well, met the man who would become my husband, got married young, and had a daughter. My husband and I love our child unconditionally, even if it took every last penny to make her happy. Strangely, the more I loved my daughter, the more I hated my biological parents. How could I not? My father was an alcoholic who beat his family and tried to kill me. What about my mother? Why didn't she take us away from Andrew Lawson? Perhaps I inherited those awful traits from my father. The anger in my heart only deepened as I recalled that my father never once paid for his crimes. I couldn't sleep at night thinking about it. One night, I finally decided I needed revenge. My daughter Emmy was a gifted actress. She had already auditioned a few times, and directors praised her emotional range. At 7, she looked almost identical to how I looked at her age. I decided to use her talent. I told Emmy that if she could ace a test I gave her, I would take her on a real film shoot. Just like Danny, I remembered every detail from back then. My test for her was to act the role of a girl who played hide-and-seek, was locked in a cabinet for 20 years, yet returned unchanged, just like Emma Lawson in the story. In this role, the girl has an alcoholic father and a younger brother. As I was planning this, Danny was about to get married. My future father-in-law, Daniel's father, is a fortune teller. The detective business card was something I produced on purpose. It took me a month to have it made so that Andrew would eventually find it. He discarded the other cards into the trash. When he came to the old house with Emmy, I had spiked his water with a hallucinogen. He must have seen something horrifying in that cabinet. I specifically instructed him that no matter what he saw, he must not harm the child until the experiment's results were confirmed. I told him that harming a child would bring the heaviest punishment and ruin future generations. He took my word seriously. Today, he came expecting to verify that the cabinet had frozen time. I brought a candle and an ice cube to stage the successful outcome of that test. My plan was to lock him in the cabinet so that he would experience the despair of the silent, pitch-black prison. But before I could carry out the plan, I couldn't help but ask him, "If you don't love your children, why did you have them?" Just then, Danny appeared. Hearing my father's heartfelt confession, he killed himself. I inherited so much from Andrew Lawson, while Danny took after Rebecca to a fault. A timid, weak person, his ultimate way to resist was to end his own life. That's so unlike me. I had long ago decided I would get my revenge. Andrew Lawson always complained that Danny wasn't anything like him, only I inherited his worst traits. Rebecca came down into the cellar, too. I had left Emmy with my husband. Unfortunately, when Rebecca arrived, Danny was already gone. I wanted to save him, but the knife struck his heart. He died within 2 minutes. When Rebecca saw Danny's body, he was already cold. She held him crying in agony, nearly collapsing. After her desperate sobbing, she got up and confronted me. "Why did you come back? Why did you come back? I chose such a wonderful family for you. What more could you want? You sought revenge on Andrew Lawson, but why kill my Danny? Mary, Rebecca pressed into me, but I didn't fight back. I let her vent. Finally, I said quietly, 'You're to blame, Rebecca. You should never have given birth to me.' She fell to the floor. Tears exhausted her. Through her tears, she managed a bitter laugh. I'd always wanted to ask my own mother why she gave birth to me. After that, we said nothing more for a long time. In truth, I knew from the moment I first saw Emma that Rebecca recognized her daughter. No, Rebecca must have realized something was off the moment the fortune teller said to find his daughter. Yet, she never exposed me. Maybe she wanted to teach her husband a lesson, but she didn't imagine that it would cost her son's life. With Danny gone, her only blood relative on Earth, we were all guilty. I don't know how much time passed before Rebecca began to fold Danny's clothes and wipe away the blood. As she cleaned, she muttered, "Danny was nothing like his father, a good, innocent boy. For your sake, he suffered mentally for 20 years, never sleeping a full night. The doctors said he had depression. We thought he was just lonely. He told us that if one day you didn't come back, he wouldn't know how to go on." Hearing that broke my heart. How could you be so cruel? As she reflected, she recounted all that Danny endured after I disappeared. "Ever since you left, he missed you every single day. When he was little on New Year's, he'd save candy for you, only to have it melt away. As he got older, he carefully saved money to prepare a dowry for you, just in case you came home." Hearing this, tears streamed down my face. Finally, Rebecca fell silent. She stood up, stooped over, and carried her son's body on her shoulder. Her legs buckled step by step as she climbed the stairs. Years ago, she had led me down into that cellar by the hand. Now, she was carrying her son's corpse up and out of it. There were many times I wanted to ask her why she didn't leave Andrew Lawson, but in the end, I stayed silent. The world is too complicated. Perhaps she lacked the resolve, or perhaps Andrew's cruel grip was impossible to break. By admitting my father was a beast, I also had to admit my mother was a weak woman. Looking for reasons why no longer mattered. Before Rebecca disappeared completely into the darkness, I called out, handing her the key to the iron cabinet. "Whenever you decide to open it, it's yours." Throughout it all, I heard Andrew pounding on the cabinet door, screaming and banging, but Rebecca seemed not to hear him. She looked at the key and said indifferently, "Throw it in the trash for me." "Thank you." Then her figure vanished into the gloom. When I returned home, my daughter Emmy ran up and wrapped her arms around me, eyes shining with pride and excitement. "How did I do, Mommy?" I showered her with praise, telling her she did an amazing job. She beamed and planted a kiss on my cheek. She truly believed it was all just a play. That night, as I was putting her to bed, I told her a fairy tale. She asked, "Why did Dad kill himself?" I froze, then collected myself. Gently, I said, "Because he was so tired, his heart was sick. It hurt so much, he felt he couldn't bear it any longer." I recalled the moment before Danny died after Andrew was locked in the cabinet. I rushed to take off my jacket to help Danny stem the bleeding, but he pushed me away. "You're useless, sister." He whispered a voice that felt like I was drifting into a dream. I hadn't heard anyone call me that in 20 years. I gripped his hand so tightly I couldn't utter a sound. Clearly, the one locked in that cabinet back then was me, but the one forever trapped in that dark, silent prison was Danny. Before Rebecca carried her son away, I asked her if she ever regretted having given birth to me. She didn't seem to hear. She only softly sang a lullaby to soothe the son on her back. It was the same lullaby she used to sing to me. Now I sang it to my own daughter. When I finished, Emmy's eyes shone. "Mommy, Grandma sang this to me too." "Yes," I said. "She forgave Grandma, right?" My little girl was truly mischievous. She understood everything. She asked, "Does Grandpa love me? Does Andrew love Danny?" Considering Andrew's bias toward boys, he must have loved Danny very much. But did he love Danny in the way a father should? No, his love for his son was more like a tyrant controlling a pet. That isn't love. Here, Mommy Emmy suddenly held something out, rummaging under her pillow. It was what Rebecca had slipped her when she stayed the night with Grandma, a cloth bundle wrapped in a handkerchief bearing my foster dad's business logo. The handkerchief was stained old and worn not clean anywhere. I recognized the traces of tears, evidence of countless nights of crying. I untied it and found neatly stacked inside was 3,000 yuan, the exact amount my foster parents paid to buy me that year. It turned out that in that game of hide-and-seek, the one trapped in that cabinet wasn't just Danny. I never saw Rebecca again. I heard the police investigated her family's disappearance. Both the new house and the old house were searched. Jennifer Thompson hung around nearby, hoping Danny would return. I sneaked back to inspect the old house and found the concrete slab covering the cellar entrance still in place. The padlock on the cabinet door remained locked, just as it had been,